Good morning. Today is Saturday the 22nd. I am in Vermont, retracing the steps of the hike I did a while back where I was in an area for the first time. Today's kind of the follow-up. And I know for a fact now this trail goes, I don't know the exact distance, but I know that it eventually hits a snag of downed undergrowth where I'm going to try to parallel and take the river that's on the map and see where that goes for a bit, and then we're back doing new territory again, so that's kind of the plan today. Also, the gate that had been closed due to a flash flood per the Forestry Service is open again, so I'm presuming they fixed that, so that opens up planning for future weeks. I was kind of planning around that up until now. Not sure if they were doing something to fix that. Some locals had said there had been a flood in January that had washed out part of the road, but apparently that's been fixed. I guess we'll find out when that comes the time for it. But right now we're going to get going and see if we can get into some new territory and what we find. So come on along and we'll do exactly that. Thanks. And the camera's playing games. We're in one of the tamer sections of the early part of this trail system today. We're going to see how far we get as far as video making. It's going to kind of be on the fly because this still is kind of new territory. I don't remember this many spider webs before. And given the time of day and the fact it's dewy, I'm going to probably get soaking wet today. I've already accepted that with resignation. Went for a walk yesterday, got caught in a downpour, so it's not anything that isn't fresh on my memory. But as I said, there's a point where this kind of gets jammed up with a large stretch of downed undergrowth that didn't look passable the last time, and I had a mixed agenda till I realized that the gate was out. So I am today a little more focused on this area. We're going to, first of all, see if it is passable at one point, goes further. And if not, there's a river that goes parallel. We're not quite there yet, but once it does, we might explore that a bit and see where that finds us. Far as business in the community, first of all, fond wishes out to Steve Culls to deal with surgery that I know he's having this week. If I had not mentioned that during the course of your statement on Facebook the other day, my apologies. I did not mean to overlook that. The believer stuff is always going to be there. It's like once a week somebody is trying to shill. I'm going to kind of make a commentary about this. You have people to this day that are shilling the CGI nonsense of Todd Standing, and anyone who has been in the community for any period of time knows that Todd Standing is full of shit. This is like one of those accepted standards that's been around forever and a day. And it's a matter where at this point in the time, I've been around for a while, so it just kind of strikes me annoyingly that it comes in cycles, but the same shit, because we have no new information coming in. It's not like I'm not trying to find stuff in here, but it just recycles itself. And one of my largest peeves is that of Standing, because he simply refuses to flush as turds go. And it's a matter of curiosity. Is it him doing sock puppets to try to keep the legend alive? Is it a matter of shills working for him? Is it a matter of people that are just so green and new to the subject, they don't know any better? Are people really that gullible? They're still buying into his BS. I mean, it's really sad either way. I mean, yeah, I haven't even personally heard from Biscardi in a while. Knock on wood, because that's not a bad thing. So when I said things down, like a quarter mile of shit like this that I didn't feel like climbing over to see if I could get around it, I may make a college tri-level effort to see if I can find where that goes. I'm not parallel with the river yet, but I'm beginning to hear it. And even if I were to get slightly lost, I could follow that out to the road, and it comes out at a campsite not far from here that I could use and then walk back to the car when I hit the road. So as long as I don't do anything navigationally too stupid, I shouldn't be prone to getting lost too much. As you can see, though, this is not the most heavily traveled trail and overgrown in many places. And that's why I'm getting wet, because dew on these charming branches brushes up and then you get all soaking wet. Luckily, it's not that cold out today. It's summer and it's been a heat wave down in Connecticut, but up here it is right now probably touching lower 70s, so it's not cold or anything, but it's not really swelteringly hot, so they get soaking wet with morning dew is refreshing yet either. Later in the day that may change. But so according to the man of the hospital hour, Mr. Cole's one of Standing's quote-unquote coordinators. I don't know what the hell he has to coordinate, but he's all the way up in Western Canada, last I thought. And he is a coordinator in Alabama, allegedly. And the Alabama coordinator is going to jail for attempted murder. So that's interesting. That's as much as I know about it, or care to know about it. It's not Bigfoot related. It's somebody out there doing dark and sinister shenanigans in the world that aren't really making the community look good, but can't help you there. Technical standpoint, waiting on some things to finalize and trying to figure out a better understanding of some of the finer points of LoRaWAN and whatnot. Allegedly, I will be camping out next weekend, allegedly. See if some things logistically fall into place. And we'll see how that goes. What is encouraging is the gate is open, though, because that gives more options. As things were going to pan out, it was looking like we might actually have to either concentrate in this immediate area or areas north of here exclusively, and then just try to figure out where the road caved in and try to get in there, because not that this is like a bustling mecca of hikers today, but in fact, last time I was here, I saw no signs of human litter or anything, because getting in here is a bitch. If you see it from the logging road in, it looks like it's a bitch too, which could be a deterrent to people coming in here. Once you get past the part that got my feet soaking wet, as you can see, it kind of opens up for a ways. Hello, Toad. But other parts are more tricky. But that, and there are parts unknown beyond potentially if I can get by that big blockage, but we'll cover that when we get there. So yeah, I might be camping out next week with a member of, well, a local Bigfoot guy. I'm not sure what his affiliations are at this point. They tend to be nebulous, and honestly, politically speaking, I don't care. He's a younger guy with a level head and the right thoughts on things that I can collaborate with. I'm not going to go out with somebody who... There's any one of a number of people that are in like the believer group that I constantly mock that are so far to the other end of the forum, or to the other end of the aisle. Hanging out with them would just be too painful. I'm gonna have, well, I think I stopped in here before and looked, but I'm gonna see if this is the same area, because if I can't get beyond the blockage, this river here is gonna, we see how hard or easy this is to follow. I've tried that with other rivers, and it really, in some cases, depends on how wet you're willing to get, because now that the gates open, the 3 river hike is now available again, and you literally do have to cross 3 rivers of this size and magnitude to get trail that goes down here. The unwritten understanding is it goes through and you pick up again on the other side, and you cross 3 rivers doing that. So it's really a matter, if you're going to go on that trail, you're waiting, so plan accordingly. So in following this, you kind of have to gauge 1, current, 2, slipperiness of the river and how much you're willing to potentially get a wet ass situation going, and then 3, oh yeah, the trail's right here. And then 3, if you have consistent riverside terrain you can use, or if it just gets to be impassable. Some of them, the stretches I've been on, to gain any ground, you're going over and around and rocky formations and things that are going to take you all day to cover, even like a mile. So all these things factor into those decisions, logistically speaking. It just amazes me that Todd Standing still has. What do you need to do? I mean, is he? So this lady was like, what to him? Like his hoax coordinator? Is he paying people to do that? Because if so, it's tragically funny. But you actually do have people on the group that I mock that still defend him. You don't have evidence that he's faking. Like, if I need to explain this to you, I'm not going to get into it. I have. There's not. If you're. I mean, I'm sorry if you're that gullible and pig-headed. Enjoy your fantasy world. I have things to do. I really have things to do. There are too many egos, too many assholes, too many hoaxers, and too many wootards, and I'm not going to. I'm getting to the point where I don't apologize in my use of some less than friendly terminology. In my older age, that I just maybe I should call myself the Bigfooting curmudgeon, because I'm just. It's gotten old. Where are the people that go into the hard-to-go places and actually look still and don't just post pictures of the Lowe's Bigfoot cutout in their backyard? Bigfoot did not do that. And I'm sure someone somewhere is going to try to make a case for, well, you don't know that. Fuck you. My response. There's 1,000,001 alternative explanations for things like that. And the fact that some weak-minded people jump to the least likely explanation first is sad. That's all I have to say about it. So, that will be the rant portion of my efforts today. I'm going to take a segment break while I can cover some ground. And the next phase of my mission is going to be to get to that blockage and then see if I can actually get around that or not. Because if not, then we're going to try the river and see where that goes or doesn't. I've tried that in the past and not gotten very far, so we'll have to just see where we get to. And then I'll have a 2-time level gauge of this area, which is like southern tier. We're actually like fairly south of the 5 bogs right now. which is actually some of the thicker forest in here. It's a lot. This is actually tame, but you also get into shit like this where going through it, you're kind of like, oh, you practically need a machete through with Sherpas. But anyway, this is where we segment break and cover some ground. And as usual, we will be back in it. We've covered some ground. We're again paralleling the river. I don't know how. I thought we had come up to the blockage. Not just yet. I think it was parallel to the river, so I think we are coming up on it. And then we get to gauge how thick and all that it is. I think I remember this part too. This grassy meadow kind of cutting along to the outside of the river's vicinity. Ow. And like some area in there, if you want to go through the tall grass, you can get to potentially, but I do want to see how far back this gets, because it does look, at least on paper, like it will get you as far. There's a system that's down by the area, a couple of towns over from here, that has a trail system, and I think it eventually locks into that. And if you follow it for a very long ways, and it actually gets that far. But I think we're at a turning point, so that is the beginning of the blockage. And first things first, I'm going to ascertain if there's a way through that's trail or not, because that looks like it opens up in there somewhat. So let's, like, you can kind of tree bop through here or go down there. Maybe this is just a very obscure Y fork. Let's have a look. Maybe I misread this because I was in a rush more last time. So let's see. So there's a wetland here, which kind of suddenly makes me think the trail keeps going that way, number one, but there's a wetland here, making me wonder if the river takes a break, and if it does, that changes my plans for that. But let's see what we got over here. If I can kind of wander out to the edge of this thing real quick. Because if I can get a gauge of the size of this, I can find it later on the map. So, remains partly cloudy. So the river either goes over that way more, or kind of tributaries into this. I mean, that over there, if I'm obscuring it. I don't mind getting a better look at that. So I'm going to try to get over there and see if I can do that. I mean, it's suddenly also getting really, it's doing what I was hoping it wouldn't. Now that the sun's coming up a little bit, it's getting really muggy. Which, during the week, it was more, I like the classic Arizona saying, it was a dry heat. But this, New England gets what Florida gets to some degree, the muggy shit weather. So, the trail's like basically there, just to not lose my bearings. And, or maybe further up here, like here, more or less. Kind of goes through here and then opens up into this. The question is, can I follow it over there and then get a look over there at that? because this does go for a ways. My concern is losing the trail and not paying attention, though, because if, again, you get turned around in here, this stuff gets really thick. And getting turned around in here, you're going to have some fun finding your way out. The difference between getting lost in here and getting lost at home is you'd be lost in here potentially for a week if you're bopping around in circles being navigationally stupid. Whereas back home I was turned around a bit for like a couple of hours. Well, 90 minutes. So let's gauge, first of all, track potential here. I always see deer tracks. Have a look at that over there, potential. And gauge if this just turns into muddy hell from here, because it looks like it might. And or if the trail isn't going here, it's going there. Which makes it harder to gauge if it's going that way or maybe this way. Let's see what this does. It's also getting tricky to stand up and not... Wouldn't mind getting the drone up, but the local or the recent difficulties with firmware and DJI, that's something to talk about if this lovely little obstruction got out of my way. DJI and the FCC, suddenly we're not dealing with the FAA, we're dealing with the FCC, has a ban on all new DJI drones due to national security concerns, but apparently it's perfectly fine for now to utilize old shitty ones like my Spark and my first generation Mavic Mini. But from the enemy side of that, if the Chinese are the enemy, they have fucked up the firmware for both. The Spark sort of works, last I checked. And the Mini, last I knew, was no longer supported on the phone that I have, so not being willing to shit out ridiculous amounts of money for a new phone, just to fly a drone. I would need to find either a new drone or a new solution until the FCC decides they're going to fuck with Potensic or one of the other competitors, because they all seem to be Chinese except for Skydio, which is apparently a really good drone, but also costs over $1,000. Which kind of makes the argument for buying the Chinese one. That all looks like muddy hell. And I'm looking for a way over. This is one of those frustrating wetlands where you have this really thick undergrowthy shit all the way around to approach it. And I think I see undergrowth. This may be where I call it, because you're you kind of, yeah, I guess I'm going to call it here. So let me take a moment to gauge how far in I've gone, because we did go further than the last time. Apparently the blockage wasn't as extreme. However, you're not going to get a drone up in this. It's too thick. Anyway, well, even when you turn off the proximity avoidance thing on the Spark, unlike the Mini, which doesn't have it, it still doesn't like being caged into an area within like 5 meters of objects. And in this area, let me just do a quick pan for you. Where are you doing that? I heard a plane. It suddenly, it didn't initially sound like a plane. And this is where I complain of, don't make weird sudden noises when I'm this far out in the woods, because it makes me really start to wonder what the fuck I'm listening to. running into something out here is, I mean, I'm armed, but you're not next door to your car. And if you did have to flee, yeah, good luck with that. Like right there, that's arm. You're going to take that right in the boys. So for those like Linda Thomas who tell me to be careful all the time, that is why. Yeah, you got to go, bitch. That's why she tells me to be careful, because things reach out and jab you, and I always end up with a few mystery scrapes when I get home, no matter if I am careful or not. This trail is not an amateur level trail, though. It is. You're in some deep shit in here. You can get into it if you are willing to duck and weave through it, but it's also a ways in. So I'm going to segment break because I already know I'm going to have to focus on navigation for a little bit. See where things take me from there. We'll be back, but navigation and not getting poked in the eye first. We'll be back. Okay, I am back. Kind of quiet in here today. Kind of muggy, but surprisingly, maybe just because it's so bleepingly thick in here, it's not muggy it's not buggy as much as you would think. When I was at the Five Bogs last time, I was swarmed by deer flies. Today, there are bugs around, don't get me wrong, but they're not nearly. I had kind of brought the DEET as a precaution to deer flies being the rule. Now I think we'd be moving into like black flies and the like, but I'm not really finding it as buggy as I would have thought. And before I finish that sentence, knock on wood to not jinx it. Not that I advocate superstition, it's really just kind of a folklore thing, but you get the gist. And resultingly, unless I think of anything really eloquent to say, this area now has two looks to it. I'll let you pan to get an idea. There are parts that you can walk through. This stretch isn't too bad, minus scaling these things and then running into bits like this. So you have to go around. Literally around some trail barriers, things like that. and the like. So you get in there and go down towards the river, which is over that way. I can hear it and kind of gauge it to be maybe 100 feet out. It does open up, case in point, if I walk through, and you see here now we're kind of like we can walk through fairly reasonably and parallel the trail down that way. Not so much that way, but you do have to do some ducking and bobbing and weaving. I would not consider this to be an amateur trail. If it's kind of like a forgotten trail that I think people remember to like maybe trail maintain once every 5 years or so. I think, oh yeah, that's there too, because there is kind of like a little gate of the road that you can see if you don't miss it. As overgrown as it is, that's not the hardest thing to do either. So it's probably why for all the times I've been to the Five Bogs, this is the first year I've actually gotten into this area. So that being said, my thoughts, you can go deeper in, but I would be preferable to do with more than one person, a compass, and having turned my Zoleo on and having some kind of a GPS, as the nature of this is. The problem is, okay, there's a river over there. So if you were to get lost, this is your contingency. You hear the water over there. I've looked at a map, so I do know that if you hook up with that and go that way to the river, you will eventually come to the road. So you do have a fail-safe. If you got further in and got away from the river, though, and you got turned around, you could be in here for effing days. Like full-on search and rescue. You're the guy that makes the news that day. That kind of fun and games. And since I'm not the most unknown person in the community, I'd rather not have that claim to fame again. The first time I ate some crow and offered it up as an educational, cautionary kind of tale. because it did actually happen in local woods that I was reasonably familiar with. And just like, today is my don't get cocky lecture. So if you do and you get turned around, it's just as easy to get lost in an area that you think you know as it is in this kind of shit. But if you get lost in this kind of big shit and you have no proof Bigfoot did that, you get lost in here and lose all sense of direction, you could be here for some time, because it all starts very quickly. Having gotten turned around in areas north of here that I thought I knew better than I did, that I actually ended up knowing, you can get turned around and it all starts looking the same. And then the biggest enemy that you can possess is your own lack of common sense, or your own little organ between your ears that does the thinking, because it starts thinking too much. I'm going to wrap this one up here because I have to walk through all that soggy goodness, and having the camera get all wet and having a shitty lens all covered with morning dew. This stuff is not going to be conducive to anything other than my annoyance. So we're going to let this one go from here. Unless I happen to run into something fascinating on the way out. And hopefully I didn't just tweak my knee on the branch that I just bent it semi the wrong way on. And we'll see where we end up. So in the meantime, assuming this is the outro, like, subscribe, leave comments, leave suggestions, things you want me to do. When I do camp out, we're going to bring some of the LoRaWAN radio stuff out and test connectivity functionality and make a case for using that the same way you kind of would for the tech in a an SAR scenario. Just doing field research instead. And until next time, let me know if you like this kind of stuff. I thought I was due for a deep woods popping through. We got to duck and weave through the thickness. It'd been a few weeks. I can go and do that. I was local last week, but I knew the place well enough that I know how to avoid that if I want to. I can do it in there too, but anyway, we're going to wrap this one up and we'll catch you next time. So, bye.